April 13th, 1945. The cold clawed through Leo Major's uniform as he crunched behind a splintered fence, trying to control his breath so it wouldn't fog the air and give him away. Boots scuffed cobblestones. German patrols. Their voices sharp as bayonets in the dark. He adjusted the eye patch, digging into his cheekbone, the leather still stiff from the field hospital. His best friend's body lay 3 kilometers behind him, but Leo wasn't about to turn back. He gripped his Sten gun tighter. Okay, he thought. Let's make them think I'm an entire army. A match flared ahead as a soldier lit a cigarette. Leo lobbed a grenade. The blast tore through the silence, painting the alley in jagged orange light. Shadows scrambled. He fired bursts into the chaos. The guns rattled, echoing off gabled roofs. Sirens wailed. Footsteps pounded away. For the next 6 hours, this lone Canadian fought for a foreign city with the force of an entire brigade, determined to spare civilian lives and make sure Corporal Willie Arsenault hadn't died in vain. If you ever remember hearing about a Canadian soldier who fought like he was in his own action movie during World War II, you'd probably be thinking about Corporal Léo Major. He's often called the Canadian Rambo. Major was the only Canadian soldier, and one of just 3 in the entire British Commonwealth, to earn the Distinguished Conduct Medal, or DCM, in 2 separate wars, World War II and the Korean War. Yet his name is still missing from most Canadian history lessons. So today, I'm sharing his story as part of our Extreme Canadian Stories series. You'll see why he inspires so many people. There's a lot to learn from his courage, grit, and just the right amount of stubbornness. Léo Major was born on January 23, 1921, in New Bedford, Massachusetts. It was supposed to have been a new start for his Canadian parents, but not long after his first birthday, the family returned home to Montreal. Growing up wasn't easy for young Leo. He often clashed with his father, who was gone for weeks at a time, working hard on railroad construction sites. When Leo was 14, his strained relationship with his father pushed him out of the house. He went to live with an aunt and then found farm work. Picture a determined teen hauling heavy equipment on a farm for long hours in mid-1930s Quebec, and you'll see Leo. Through working on the farm, he built up the sort of strength and grit that would serve him well throughout the rest of his life. As the 1930s drew to a close, the Great Depression weighed everyone down, but Leo managed to find construction jobs. Probably because of his strong work ethic and because he was too stubborn to take no for an answer. By 1940, the world was on the brink of chaos. Nazi Germany's aggression in Europe escalated, and countries like Canada began to mobilize. Leo was 19 and felt ready to prove himself in the theater of war. He joined the Canadian Army, determined to make his family proud. At first, Leo trained with the Royal 22 Regiment, often called the 22s, based in Quebec. When he heard that another French-Canadian unit was about to be sent overseas, he asked to be transferred there. His request was granted, and in late 1940, he and his regiment set sail from Halifax, enduring bitter winds and rough seas until they reached Scotland in early 1941. The next 3.5 years were exhausting. Day after day, the recruits learned tactics, discipline, scouting, and how to handle every sort of weapon. Most men in the regiment didn't speak much English, but Leo did. That set him apart. He was also a good shot with a knack for scouting. In time, he became a sniper and a reconnaissance specialist, training in commando-style missions. Life wasn't all dryness and discipline. Leo also picked up boxing as a hobby. He would later say that fighting in a ring took his mind off the bigger fights waiting across the English Channel. He became especially close with Corporal Wilfred Willie Arsenault, a fellow French Canadian who would later join him on one of the most dangerous missions of the entire war. By the spring of 1944, rumors spread through the Allied camps that an invasion of Nazi occupied France was imminent. The Allies had bombed German occupied ports and rail lines, hoping to confuse Hitler about the exact location of their landing. In early June, General Dwight D. Eisenhower gave his fateful order. The largest amphibious invasion in history was about to launch on the beaches of Normandy on June 6, 1944, D-Day. Léo and the Régiment de la Chaudière were among those brave men who participated in the operation. When Léo stepped off the landing craft on D-Day, he found himself wading through cold, rough water toward Juno Beach, which had been assigned to the Canadian forces. Machine gun fire, artillery blasts, and the roar of aircraft overhead assaulted his senses. Fear was as thick as the smoke from the explosions all around. Still, Léo pressed on. He got onto the beach around 10 a.m., linking up with the rest of the Régiment de la Chaudière. Machine gun nests gave the Germans the high ground as they pinned down some of the Canadian troops with heavy gunfire. But with the help of a few fellow soldiers, Léo destroyed a German bunker, rushing in with a Bangalore torpedo to blow a hole in the wall. He and others then burst inside, caught the Germans off guard, and seized the position. When asked later if he was scared, he answered, "I was too busy shooting back to worry." That was pure Léo. He always showed a focus during dangerous situations that blocked out fear so that he could keep moving forward. Not long after landing, Léo undertook a reconnaissance mission. He and another scout discovered a German SD KFZ 251 half-track, an armored personnel carrier that was half tank and half truck. The crew inside was relaxed, smoking cigarettes, obviously confident that no allies would be able to breach the beach. They were wrong. Léo surprised them and fired before they even knew what hit them, killing and wounding soldiers until they surrendered. He then seized the half-track and found secret codes that would prove to be extremely valuable for Allied intelligence. But that wasn't the end of it. He drove his commandeered half-track back to the beach, but he had to stop frequently and stand on top of the half-track, waving to friendly forces so they wouldn't blow him to bits. By all accounts, he refused to hand over his prize to a British officer who ordered him to relinquish it. Despite being outranked, Léo insisted that the vehicle be delivered to his own regiment, instead of just following orders. This mixture of boldness and loyalty would become a hallmark of his wartime exploits. A few days after D-Day, Léo and a small Canadian patrol tangled with a group of SS soldiers, a fearsome Nazi organization responsible for horrible crimes in occupied Europe. During this firefight, Léo managed to kill 4 SS men, but one enemy soldier, mortally wounded, tossed a phosphorus grenade towards the French Canadian. It detonated near Léo's face, burning his left eye and sending him reluctantly to a field hospital. He could have died if the grenade had blown up a centimeter or two closer. The 2 medics who treated him told him he'd be shipped back to England because of the severity of his injury. Léo refused. He declared, "I only need one eye to aim my rifle." So the doctors wrapped his face, and soon he returned to action, wearing what he called his pirate's eye patch. From that point on, Léo was known for the patch and for being the sniper who only needed one good eye. He joked that losing an eye made him look even fiercer, so it didn't bother him as much as you might expect. If he had retreated back to safety, his entire story might have ended there. Instead, this was just the beginning. By the fall of 1944, the Allies had broken out of Normandy, liberated Paris, and advanced across Belgium. But success rarely comes easily. In southwest Holland, near the Scheldt River, the Germans still blocked the vital port of Antwerp from Allied use. The job of clearing the area fell heavily on the 1st Canadian Army and other Allied units. The fighting conditions were miserable: flooded fields, booby traps, and tenacious German defenders. Leo's unit found themselves engaged in the thick of it, wading through deep, muddy terrain, enduring fierce gunfights, and capturing towns one by one. During this grueling campaign, Leo performed a now legendary act. Leo was sent on a reconnaissance mission to locate a missing group of Allied recruits who had failed to return after being sent to capture a nearby town. His good mate, Corporal Wilfred Arsenal, was initially assigned to accompany him, but fell ill, leaving Leo to proceed all alone. While investigating, Leo found abandoned equipment, confirming that the recruits had likely been captured. Seeking shelter from the cold and rain in a small house, Leo spotted 2 German soldiers walking along a nearby dike. He captured one soldier silently and used him as bait to lure the second one in. When the second soldier attempted to use his weapon, Leo killed him. With his prisoner in tow, Leo infiltrated the German position and forced their commanding officer to surrender. In total, the garrison, comprising nearly 100 men, surrendered after Leo killed 3 additional soldiers who had resisted. As Leo began single-handedly escorting his 93 prisoners back to Allied lines, SS troops from a nearby position opened fire on the group, killing 7 and wounding others. Leo continued leading his captives through the chaos. Along the way, he encountered a Canadian Sherman tank and ordered its crews to fire on the SS position, silencing their attack. This act of bravery exemplified Leo's fearlessness and resourcefulness. Although he was reportedly recommended for the Distinguished Conduct Medal for this action, it's said he allegedly refused it because he considered General Montgomery incompetent and unworthy of presenting him with such an honor. This refusal remains a debated aspect of his story, though, and the official records don't confirm this detail. But either way, what's undisputed is that Leo was known for brave, near-reckless missions. More than once, he returned with handfuls of prisoners, leaving fellow soldiers in awe. Leo's actions during this campaign not only showcased his extraordinary courage, but also cemented his reputation amongst his peers as a soldier capable of accomplishing near-impossible feats all on his own. Definitely the guy you wanted to have on your side. As the Canadians pushed into Germany in February 1945, Leo was nearly killed once again. He and a military chaplain were helping load corpses from a destroyed German Tiger II tank into a universal carrier in Keppeln, Germany. While driving away, their vehicle ran over an anti-tank mine. The explosion killed both the chaplain and the driver, while Major was thrown into the air and landed hard on his back. It may seem odd that Major was loading German corpses as part of his duties, but after a battle, it was common practice for soldiers to assist in clearing the area of casualties, regardless of their nationality. This task was often necessary for sanitary reasons, to prevent disease, and to clear the battlefield for further operations. The incident highlights the dangers faced by soldiers, even in non-combat situations during the war. It also demonstrates Major's resilience, as he survived yet another close call with death during his military service. When he came to, medics told him he had fractured vertebrae, broken ankles, and cracked ribs. They planned to send him home, but Leo had other ideas. In the hospital, he faked being calm and then snuck out at night once he was put in a plaster body cast. A month and a half later, after convalescing at a friend's house, he found a hacksaw, cut himself out of the cast, and returned to the front. That's right, the man had a plaster cast cut off with a saw and returned to fight in the war. By March 1945, the Allies were hammering the last of the German defenses. The Netherlands was about to be fully liberated, and Leo was about to write his name in Dutch history. Which brings us to one of the most talked about moments in Leo's career, his nighttime mission in the Dutch city of Zwolle. In April 1945, the Canadian forces were nearing Zwolle. The Allies believed the city was well defended, and they prepared artillery barrages to break enemy resistance. But 2 volunteers, Leo and his friend Corporal Willie Arsenault, stepped forward to take on a risky reconnaissance mission. They hoped to see if the city was truly full of Germans or not. If it wasn't, they could save Zwolle from bombardment and, more importantly, save many civilian lives. That night, Major and Arsenal moved out under the cover of darkness. They reached a local farmhouse where a Dutchman, Hendrik van Gerner, pointed out potential German positions near the railway. They planned to slip into the city, gather information, maybe make contact with local resistance fighters, then report back before dawn. But tragedy struck quickly after leaving the farmhouse. Arsenal was killed by German gunfire by a nearby railway crossing. In an interview about losing his friend, Leo once said, "I got mad, but I managed to control myself." He returned fire, killing 2 Germans in retaliation, while the rest fled in a vehicle. Leo then pressed on alone, driven by anger, wanting to avenge his friend, and by his desire to spare Zwolle from destruction. You can imagine by this point in the war, Major had probably seen enough death and destruction and can hopefully understand why this mission would have seemed so important to him. After the death of Corporal Willie Arsenault, Leo found himself alone on the outskirts of the city. The plan had been for the two of them to split up and create enough noise and confusion to make the Germans think a full Canadian force had arrived. Leo decided he could still press on and try to do it on his own. Different accounts describe his next moves. In the best-known version, Leo roamed the deserted streets, occasionally bumping into small groups of German soldiers or collaborators. He set off grenades and fired his Sten gun, a British 9mm submachine gun. He drove a captured car, flying a white flag through the streets, shooting at random targets, tricking the remaining Germans into fleeing. Then he linked up with members of the Dutch resistance, who helped spread the news that Zwolle was free. One official document cites Leo as also burning down the Gestapo headquarters to encourage enemy troops to abandon the city. There's also a version of this event that claims the Gestapo set fire to their own building to destroy incriminating documents before retreating. Either way, what's undisputed is, by dawn, Zwolle was largely emptied of German forces. That morning, Leo returned to his unit, exhausted, wet from crossing canals, and carrying Arsenault's body. The planned Allied shelling was cancelled, sparing many civilian lives and preserving what was left of their city. In recognition of this feat, he was awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal in 1945. His DCM recommendation mentions how he continued to patrol alone for hours, forming local patrols of Dutch civilians and forcing the enemy to withdraw. Shortly after Germany's surrender, Leo headed home in August 1945. Unlike the triumph we sometimes imagine, there were no parades or cheering crowds. He stepped off a train in Montreal and was greeted only by the stark reality of post-war life. Many veterans experienced something similar. Leo tried to return to normal by working as a pipe fitter, still dealing with the effects of his war wounds, especially his back injury from the landmine. He also underwent surgery to try to relieve some of his pain. By 1950, conflict was brewing again, this time in Korea. Communist North Korea invaded the South, and the United Nations called for help. Canada joined the fight, sending a brigade in 1951. When the Army looked for experienced veterans to form a special scout and sniper platoon, they turned to men like Léo Major. He was assigned once again to the 2nd Battalion, Royal 22 Régiment, the Vendus, part of the 25th Canadian Infantry Brigade in the 1st Commonwealth Division. Early on, he served as a scout sniper, using the stealth and nerve he had honed in Europe. Then came a pivotal battle in late 1951, on Hill 355, nicknamed Little Gibraltar. The Chinese forces had taken the hill from the Americans, and the Canadians were sent in to help retake it. Reporters say about 40,000 Chinese troops attacked over 2 days, surrounding the area. Under the cover of night, Leo led an 18-man team armed with Sten submachine guns, and some even wearing running shoes to keep their footsteps quiet. They snuck through enemy lines, crept up the slopes from behind, and unleashed surprising gunfire. Chaos took over, the Chinese weren't prepared for the attack to come from inside of their positions. Before long, Leo's team had regained the hill, but a larger enemy counterattack soon came, and mortar rounds pounded the Canadians. Leo famously radioed their own mortar teams to bring their barrage dangerously close to his position. So close he could practically hear the bombs whizzing past him. He and his platoon endured wave after wave of attacks, holding Hill 355 for 3 days until other Allied units finally arrived. For that, he earned a second DCM. The British officer who pinned the medal must have marveled at the short, one-eyed veteran fighter who refused to retreat and never backed down when the odds were stacked against him. When the Korean War ended, Leo returned home again. This time, he settled more quietly into civilian life. He worked as a plumber and lived in Longueuil, Quebec, with his wife Pauline de Coisiel, whom he'd married in 1951. The couple started a family and eventually had 4 children together. For a long time, he didn't talk about his war exploits, even with family. During World War II, his mother had actually sold some of his civilian clothes, thinking he was never coming home. His father never quite admitted how proud he might have felt, and the relationship remained strained. Whether out of modesty or frustration, Leo stayed quiet about the details of D-Day, the Scheldt, Zwolle, and Hill 355. In 1968, that privacy was shaken when a delegation from Zwolle finally tracked him down. They wanted him to attend the 25th anniversary of the city's liberation. That was the first time his wife truly learned what had happened, that he'd freed an entire city all on his own. Stories like that can be hard to wrap your head around, especially if you've never heard them before. No matter how well you think you know someone, I don't think most of us can fully grasp what people who served in war really went through. Major's family, as well as the rest of Canada, learned that in the Netherlands, they called him their one-eyed ghost, the man who single-handedly drove the Germans out of town. From then on, Leo visited several times. He'd be treated like royalty, hoisted on shoulders, asked for autographs, and celebrated for sparing civilians from artillery fire. The city of Zwolle later honored him as Liberator and made him an honorary citizen in 2005. He reconnected with the family of his fallen friend, Corporal Wilfred Willie Arsenal, as well. Zwolle built a memorial for Arsenal, reminding everyone that their liberation came at a heavy cost. Brave Canadians like Arsenal paid the ultimate price for their freedom, for the freedom of strangers they'd never met, just because it was the right thing to do. And although he didn't talk much about them, the stories of Major's heroism never fully left him. But he focused on things closer to home, like his family. His children grew up, got married, and started their own families. During his lifetime, Major was able to welcome 5 grandchildren and was a proud grandfather. Sadly, on October 12, 2008, Léo Major passed away in Longueuil, Quebec. He was 87 years old. Major was buried at the last post-fund National Field of Honor in Pointe-Claire, Quebec, a fitting resting place for a Canadian hero. A few years later, on the 75th anniversary of victory in Europe, Canada Post issued a stamp in his honor, referring to him as the One-Eyed Ghost. A Montreal documentary also profiled his life, adding more layers to the man behind the legend. And in 2023, a Canadian band named Mystery released a song called Pearls and Fire, inspired by Leo's exploits. Yet for all these tributes, many Canadians still don't know his story. If he'd been American or British, perhaps he'd be in countless epic war movies. Instead, he remained a humble man with a flair for bravado in the heat of battle. Léo Major's story could fill an entire book, but at its core, it's about one thing: refusing to give up. He believed that determination, loyalty, and courage, especially against the worst odds, could bend the course of history. Whether you picture him capturing a German half-track on D-Day, crawling through the flooded mud of the Scheldt, or sneaking into Zwolle alone to push out an entire garrison, one thing stays the same: he did what most of us wouldn't dare. He wasn't perfect, and some called him reckless. Others doubted his stories, but what no one questions is that he put himself on the line for others time and time again. He saved civilian lives, he risked everything for his friends, and he never wanted any recognition for it. Leo's life reminds us that courage isn't about scale. It's about showing up even when you're scared, even when it's easier to walk away. If you ever find yourself facing something hard, remember the one-eyed soldier who kept moving forward because turning back wasn't an option. He might have called himself just an ordinary soldier, but we know better. He was one of the greatest Canadians to ever wear the uniform. Pinecone Diaries is researched and written by me, Craig Rourke. Thank you for listening. Please consider leaving a rating or review. That helps me understand where to focus as I continue uncovering and sharing amazing yet lesser known or forgotten Canadian stories and history. Also, I love hearing from you, so feel free to email me or connect with me on social media. My email address and social media links are in the show notes. As those of you know who follow me on social media already, I share tons of cool Canadian content there that never makes it onto the show. Thanks again for listening, and have a rad rest of your day.